Hello, this is Laura Sawinski, Group Editor for the CropLife Media Group here at Meister Media. And I am doing my occasional check-ins with industry folks and kind of seeing where we're at this time of year. We're mid-season, June, July timeframe here. And I started doing these little CropLife combos a year ago. And I have Stephanie Zelinko, National Agronomist, and we're going to talk about a field trial conducted with Xtreme Ag in 2024 on the response of different corn and soybean varieties to in-season potassium applications. So with that, Stephanie, welcome. Love to hear more about the trial, if you can explain what was going on and what you guys were intending to learn from this.
Yeah, this was a really exciting trial for us. There's a lot of work done out in the industry, especially on corn varieties or hybrids, of some responding better to nitrogen and others, don't need as much nitrogen. And we wondered, things we'd seen in the field, that we could see potassium deficiencies under certain hybrids or even soybean varieties. And we said, well, maybe there's a connection, just like there is to nitrogen, to potassium. And so we worked with Kevin Matthews in North Carolina, whose field day and trials are set up very closely with Pioneer. And so we worked with their Pioneer rep and tried to figure out, are we going to see that same connection within the Pioneer line to a potassium response? So we had him kind of select 3 corn hybrids and 3 soybean varieties from his portfolio, kind of different ends of the spectrum that he thought might respond differently. And then we just did basically with and without potassium to see if there was truly an added response to that additional potassium.
Okay. So yeah, as far as the criteria, as to what you chose, I mean, like you said, you wanted to kind of find a diversity and a wide spectrum. Is there anything else as to how and what you chose?
Nope, we left that up to the Pioneer salesman just because he knows his territory. I don't know the North Carolina hybrids as well, but I just told him that, we are seeing these visual differences in other parts of the country. Kind of pick out a couple different ones that you might think would show a difference, and that's what he did.
Okay. And then what did you find out as far as the hybrids and varieties that you guys chose? Which one responded best to the applications, the potassium applications?
So I was really surprised that there was actually a visual difference to those. When we went out there in August, we could actually see some hybrids on corn responding differently. Soybean was a little bit not as visible. And then when we took all those to yield, it was all over the board. Like some responded really, really well. And when they pulled ears at the end of the season, you could see that in the ear sizing and the ear consistency. And then on the soybeans as well, not quite as dramatic as we had on the corn side, but still there was some differences. Just to kind of give you an idea, we saw anywhere from a 20 bushel yield increase by adding potassium to a 35 or 33 bushel yield increase on the corn. So that's pretty significant for a grower for adding 5 gallons of additional potassium to get that significant of a yield increase.
And then, what part obviously did weather play? I know obviously 2024 was all over the map, as has been 2025 thus far. What did that do to the results?
So weather's always going to play a part. And at the time I looked at them, it was hurricane season and in the middle of a hurricane. But at that point in time, we could already see visual differences. So I think, weather probably played a part, but because we could see things early on, I think it's going to be kind of repeatable no matter what the growing season is. You might not see that, 20 to 30 bushel yield increase. Maybe that stress helped with that a little bit. We know potassium is good for standability. So in those heavy rains, it may have helped, that, but yield is yield. So I think that's something that we can repeat in the future.
I mean, you mentioned that yield of 20 to 33 bushel. What else stood out for you as far as the results that y'all got back?
So ear consistency and sizing. So when we were going out to harvest, we pulled, I think it was like 10 ears in a row. And just being able to see that, if you counted the, rows around, it was very consistent. And that's ultimately where the yield came from. We were providing, more rows around, longer ears. And all of that's determined early on in the corn life cycle. When it's knee-high corn or less is when it's determining, how big that ear is going to be. So having that potassium at planting time, I think helped determine that early on, and then having good weather conditions to hold that yield really helped throughout the season.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Getting down to the nuts and bolts, if you will, for the farmer and grower, like what does the ROI look like for farmers, growers, and then likewise, what does this mean for them? How does this impact their planning and such?
So using last year's economics, because it was a 2024 trial, I have, those in front of me.
Mm-hmm,
We were seeing, $30+ return on that fertilizer investment. So that's additional dollars above and beyond. So they could pay for that fertilizer and get, $30 to $80 more, depending upon what that hybrid was. The soybean, it was a little bit tighter, but we were still seeing a positive return from that application that got put out there.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's notable. So, advice for farmers who want to replicate, this type of trial on
I
their.
definitely think it's something you have to, try on your own field because, like you mentioned, environmental factors could play a part. Also, what hybrids, that's the biggest take home here is everyone responded a little bit differently. And so it's something that we noticed early on when I was working in our research farm in Michigan. Like we could see certain hybrids showing potassium deficiency earlier than others when we were low. And
Mm-hmm,
so I know it's going to be specific. So I recommend growers do a trial themselves, whether they turn on and off that potassium pump as they drive through the field, or if they're able to do some strips crossways with other methods of application. It's just a good way to get a good understanding of how that's going to respond on your field.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So as far as you mentioned, having farmers, trial this themselves on their own land, what's next for the research? Will this be expanded or other things in a similar vein, or what's next?
We did share this with our sales team and told them to, talk to their growers to get some more localized data. We've pushed it out to our research farm. And then on my home farm, I did some work with some corn trials where we're going to spray potassium crossways. So we did, I think, 6 different hybrids, and we're going to spray potassium crossways to see, again, if a foliar application will have that same response. So not exactly a replicate of what we did, but another option to see where that potassium might be a response.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Very good. I guess before I let you go, one last question. It's always good to check in and see where we're at, mid-year, July 2025. What's your general take? What are you hearing out there? What are you seeing? How are things setting up for this year and
I
compared?
think it's all over the board. I've done a lot of traveling to a number of different states the last couple of weeks, and moisture seems to be kind of the big key. Is everybody's getting quite a bit of rain. Not so much that they're wanting to turn off yet because they know it's kind of bad luck if they say stop raining, that it might stop raining for good.
True.
But I think it is adding stress of getting some of those, post applications out, whether they're side dressing nitrogen or coming in with a foliar pass or even like their herbicide pass. So I think guys are a little bit worried about getting, some of that work done where we're getting those heavy rainfalls. But overall, I think the crop looks really, really good every place I've traveled. I think we've had enough moisture that we have, good looking corn and soybean crop out there.
That's great. It's nice to end on a good note. Well, thank you, Stephanie, for joining us. Appreciate the information on the field trials that you all did last year. We look forward to having you come back and giving us an update on the research.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
You bet.